still pretty close. At the very least, they certainly seem to be the single biggest faction of the American entertainment industry at present, with their closest rival, video-on-demand streaming services, trailing by a fair bit. So yeah, pretty big shock. And the reason why this is interesting to me is because I really do not feel like the other institutions of mainstream American culture reflect the power and popularity that video games hold in modern American society. I mean, sure, some video games are merchandised up the wazoo, and in recent years, movies and TV shows based on video games seem to be finally achieving some degree of popular and critical acclaim. And in any given year, some of the best-selling games in America involve American professional sports, suggesting some cultural synergy there. But as far as deeper cultural attention goes, I feel like knowledge of video games is just not particularly valued as an important form of American cultural literacy when compared to knowledge of other forms of American entertainment. There is no mention of video games at all in this dictionary of American cultural literacy, for instance. MASH and Monty Python get mentioned though. Or, let us compare how often various major American publications known for their cultural analysis talk about popular video game franchises in contrast to some other popular entertainment thing. Google informs me that the New York Times has written about the Netflix series Bridgerton 4,350 times, while they have only written about Call of Duty, which is probably the single most popular video game franchise in the United States, 2,400 times. And a lot of that coverage was just in the context of business stories about the Microsoft-Activision merger. The Atlantic has written about Dark Souls exactly 4 times, but the Green Bay Packers 306 times. The NewYorker.com has 417 articles mentioning Lil Nas X, but just 43 that reference Mario Kart. In short, within the world of elite-level American cultural commentary, thinking and talking about sports, pop music, movies, television, and novels is commonplace, but video games, considerably less so. And why is this? Why does literally the most popular form of American entertainment often seem like it's struggling to get the same level of cultural credit as the other stuff? Well, I have a few theories. But before we get to those, let us just hear a brief word from today's video sponsor, Brilliant. Hello friends, so if you are watching this video, you are clearly somebody who likes acquiring knowledge for its own sake, but one cannot get a complete education from weird Canadian YouTubers alone, and that is where our friendly friends at Brilliant come in. Brilliant is an online learning platform offering hundreds of interactive courses on a wide variety of important topics, with lessons running the gamut from beginner to pro. Their main focus is on the so-called STEM topics, with courses on all of the important stuff that everybody is scrambling to get a handle on these days in this big, scary world of ours, including quantum computing, coding, blockchain, and everyone's favorite, AI. My pals over at TLDR News were recently pushing Brilliant's course on hypothesis testing, which is one of those things that everyone should have at least some basic understanding of, given how many wild claims of cause and effect are being made about everything these days, especially in the realm of health and medicine. So I gave it a try, and I must say it was pretty good. Like most Brilliant courses, it offered a mix of clear and well-written lessons, interactive assignments, a natural challenge curve, and a fun and engaging presentation with more than a touch of whimsy and humor. So if this sounds like the sort of thing that you would be into, and why wouldn't it be, why not give a click to the link in the thing below and visit brilliant.org/JJ today. Your first 30 days are free, and the first 200 of you who sign up get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Brilliant. Learn to think. Okay, so theory number 1 about why video games do not seem to hold the same cultural cachet as other forms of American entertainment is just that they are new. I mean, like I said earlier, video games have been around in some form for over 4 decades, but movies have been around for over 100 years, and television for over 80. Pretty much every American currently living was born into a world where TVs and movies already existed, to say nothing of literature and sports and music, whereas modern video games were basically invented and rose to their current level of popularity entirely within my lifetime. And it takes time for anything to be taken seriously. Movie criticism, as a specific form of intellectual commentary found in sophisticated newspapers and magazines, only really took off in the 1930s or so, after motion pictures had been around for about 3 decades. Professionalized TV criticism is even more recent. The New Yorker, for instance, didn't hire its first television critic until 1992, after TV had been around for nearly a half-century. In both cases, the general view was that the medium had to mature before it was worthy of serious analysis from serious people. I mean, early movies and TV shows were considered extremely simple entertainment at best, and mindless schlock at worst. They were acknowledged to exist as a popular form of entertainment, but that was basically as much cultural credit as they got. And I think video games have followed a similar timeline. The technology has gotten so much better over the last decade or so, and this has allowed for the creation of much more complex and substantial games, and so it logically follows that we should only expect them to start receiving more serious cultural attention and cultural integration now. The previous few decades, by contrast, feel like gaming's equivalent of the silent movie or vaudeville era. Historically, video games have also likely suffered from a bit of a generational gap in terms of cultural perceptions that is only starting to be overcome as well. According to the Entertainment Software Association, the average American video game player is 32 and has been gaming for 21 years, meaning most of them started playing games as kids. Video games were, of course, heavily marketed to children in their early days, and this fostered a lot of disinterest in them on the part of the boomer generation, and that was probably pretty bad for gaming's respectability as a cultural force, given, until quite recently, American journalism and academia and the rest of the professional intelligentsia was so heavily boomer-dominated. Cartoons would probably be a good analogy as well, given comics and animation were another medium that spent its first 4 decades or so of existence primarily understood as a kid's thing, and only really saw its base start to broaden in the latter half of the 20th century. Video games' second obstacle to deeper cultural appreciation might just be something a bit more fundamental and inescapable, namely that they're games. This was the argument that the famed movie critic Roger Ebert made when he controversially posited that a video game, unlike a movie, could never rise to the level of art. A video game, he said, has rules, points, objectives, and an outcome. A critic might cite an immersive game without points or rules, but I would say then it ceases to be a game and becomes a representation of a story, a novel, a play, a dance, a film. And I think this is basically correct. Games possess certain defining game-like qualities that put them in a different category from other forms of entertainment, simply because they are things that you play to win, which makes them inherently more linear and restrictive, and some might argue less interesting to analyze and appreciate. The reason why people get Pulitzers for reviewing movies and music, but not video games, is probably the same reason no one has gotten a Pulitzer for reviewing a golf course. Games can try to be more like movies or novels or whatever, with rich plots and well-written characters, but as Ebert says, if a game tries too hard to become art, it runs the risk of failing as a game and becoming something different. An interactive sensory experience, perhaps. I guess the larger conclusion would be that entertainment culture is basically split between entertainment you directly control, like toys and board games and video games and sports that you play, and entertainment that is basically a performance that someone else puts on for you, be it in the form of a book or a movie or an album or a sporting match that you watch. And the former is always doomed to be viewed as the slightly lower form of culture just because it entertains on a more self-indulgent level. Okay, now my third theory explaining the video game cultural appreciation gap would just be that I think for quite a long time, gamer culture has deliberately and consciously defined itself as something apart from the American cultural mainstream. In other words, video game enjoyers have been historically happy to embrace the idea